Even under the most charitable framing, assimilation through education cannot deliver the cohesion that it claims to produce coming from side affirmative. Just a vibe check on this. Affirmative just sounding like Trump, Vance, and Charlie Kirk right now. Because we want to note that education is uniquely powerful because it shapes identity before individuals can meaningfully consent or resist in the first place. It's not just a simple boohoo. This is why there's always a lot of infighting when it comes to curriculums historically. I'm not quite sure why people in Golf's roles can just avoid another long-term infighting over the soft erasures because it's really impossible for the elders or people within this religion to just realistically or magically let this one slide if the state decides to do this or if we try to formulate this kind of educational system in the first place. No mac on this. Early on, the ones coming from Joseph clearly pointed out that an assimilation-focused system exploit this by repeatedly signaling that minority identities are irrelevant, inconvenient, and incompatible with public life. It's not just re-ranking them, as Oo pointed out, but we want to take this into the real core of characterization. It's a soft erasure of them through institutions that take care of their future generations. It's a way for people to be bigoted with the baggage of their learning institution while weakening all of the future generations for these minorities in the first place. And here's the kicker. When this message is delivered and integrated daily through curriculums, norms, or an evaluation, cohesion is not built through shared commitment, but through identity suppression. And this is the reason why the impact coming from Joseph can realistically exist. And this is the causal link that is missing from our opening as well. For Muslims in US, for example, this means being forced by Trump in practice to live under the shared norms that are culturally and implicitly religiously coded, while being told that these norms are simply neutral society, like removing your hijab because the public are being disturbed by how you practice your culture in the public. Like, literally, that's so off. This looks like prayer schedules, dietary restrictions, and dress and religious observance are treated as not just a legitimate piece of someone's private life. You are literally pointing out that you still retain your private life, but you cannot practice it in public. That's a simple assault to your own individuality in the first place. Because you need to remember the power of educational institution that heavily emphasizes this cultural domination in the first place. Notice how all of the teams in the affirmative move on their impact because they forgot to make this one out. But I'm going to illustrate this easier for you. Heavy emphasis means that the state repeatedly attaches real consequences to cultural conformity through compulsory system in the educational institution that children cannot exit and families cannot meaningfully resist. A system that heavily emphasizes cultural domination when it embeds majority norms into criteria by which educational success is measured through and enforced through this, because schools operate through compulsory participation in hierarchical evaluation. This is embedding transforms into cultural alignment into a prerequisite for mobility. But I'll take the POI. Sure, one shot.
CO cannot win the debates because the debate is about ethnicity, not religion in itself. But also, Ghana practices something similar. And from someone from a minority group, I don't think
cultural and ethnic identities are religious are literally tied to one of the examples that I've given to you. Like literally, you have Islamic State. You move into other countries. That's the reason why US is literally a diverse country. You're also going to force this one out when you apply this motion. That's a useless POI. Minority students are faced with a repeated choice between cultural expression and institutional reward in your side of the house. And this is the reason why I use US as a situational build-up. Because in real life, US doesn't really have a single culture, and that's why secularism is kind of possible for them. But the problem in the world that Prop is building, as Joseph pointed out, you're placing one culture over the other in your curricula. It doesn't matter if effects are not proactively creating destruction in private lives, as Golf team always pointed out. The problem is that they're also going to be dismissive to the current and existing abuses that dominant culture does to these minorities, like how anti-Muslim rhetorics in the Philippines, for example, exists because these people outscales them, and there's a lack of education in this country to acknowledge individuality. This is the reason why you need to literally improve this aspect rather than just creating a forced system. The problem in affirmative is that you literally legitimize this type of action, maybe because there's going to be a lesser harm if the setup is in itself, Hail Mary, full of no harm, everyone is neutral. But the problem is, when you apply this motion, everyone already have a dominant culture because literally they have this sort of bigotry, they have this sort of dominance that breeds their confidence in order for them to trample other minority cultures. Like you can see in US, for example. On our side, The goal that we have is empowerment, not for accommodation as charity, because cultural relevance is not something minorities can take for granted. It has to be protected institutionally in order for them to survive. In real politics, we already see this logic at work. Like politicians actively court Muslim communities, not out of goodwill, but because empowered groups have voice, leverage, and electoral weight. And that influence exists only because the culture remains visible, organized, and socially legitimate. Literally, you are killing these people in their own state because of this kind of action in the first place. A culture that is trained to see itself as peripheral in childhood cannot meaningfully assert itself in adulthood. And this is the problem. This means that what looks like social harmony coming from your illusion is going to be harmful, that is slowly dismantling a community's ability to advocate for itself. It's a soft erasure, and you need to accept that. No, this is the principle that you can only obtain CO, which is the survival of your own culture. And the fact that leaders can still care for you because your own culture is literally not weakened in the first place. Now, it's important to be clear what this motion is really talking about. This will also take out CG in comparison. This is an emphasis motion, not a policy bans practice on paper, right? No one is saying that students are legally forced to abandon their culture. Of course, it's common sense. But the decision doesn't save government because the outcome is still the same. Remember, when educational system consistently treats one culture as normal over the others, it's going to be problematic, especially we already have existing harms towards this. This looks like the framing makes stereotyping and bullying a lot easier in public spaces because, bro, why are you practicing or wearing your hijab in the public? That's not what teacher taught to us. That's going to be the line of Gen Alphas in your world. In the comparative, who the fuck actually cares if you have a lot of culture? In real life, especially in this era, we connect through people with a lot of people, we connect with a lot of people in different globe in the first place. Heck, even in this debate, I'm the only Filipino debating with people with different cultures. Imagine if I can just have a leeway to create cases insulting other people's culture because I'm a Roman Catholic who's literally have the majority of the support of the package with the system that you're building up. So the problem is, the spaces that you create or your own say is going to be the spaces that create that access neutral also reflects how your own state is going to be neutral on these issues in the public spaces. And that's the worst thing possible that you can do in the spaces where these minorities are already thriving, in the spaces where this minority are already struggling to survive.